She left before she left, and you didn't see it, didn't know it, thought everything was fine, but she was already gone. Months gone, emotionally gone, while sitting right next to you. That distance you felt last month, that disconnect you noticed, that coldness you couldn't explain, that was her leaving, not getting ready to leave, already leaving, not thinking about leaving, actively leaving. And by time she walks out the door, she's been gone for 6 months. This is why you're shocked, why you didn't see it coming, why it feels sudden when it wasn't sudden at all. Emotional departure precedes physical departure. Internal exit happens before external exit. Psychological leaving occurs before actual leaving. By time she leaves physically, she already left emotionally. By time she walks out, she already walked out internally. By time she says it's over, she already ended it psychologically. Gap between her emotional departure and physical departure is where confusion lives, where shock generates, where I didn't see it coming originates. You didn't see it coming because by time it came, it had already been happening for months. Didn't recognize signs because signs were internal, not external. Didn't notice ending because ending was emotional, not physical. Why she detaches before she leaves. Why emotional departure precedes physical departure. This is anticipatory grief, is psychological process, is emotional mechanism that happens when ending is inevitable, but hasn't happened yet. Anticipatory grief means grieving loss before loss occurs, processing ending before ending happens, experiencing absence before departure completes. When she knows relationship will end, when she's decided to leave, when she's certain departure is coming, she begins grieving immediately. Grief doesn't wait for official ending, doesn't pause until physical departure, doesn't delay until external completion. Grief starts when loss becomes certain, begins when ending becomes inevitable. And when she decides to leave, even if she hasn't left yet, even if she's still physically present, even if relationship continues externally, her grief begins. Grief requires detachment, requires emotional distance, requires psychological separation. Can't grieve while still attached, can't process loss while still connected, can't experience ending while still engaged. So she detaches, creates distance, separates psychologically. Detachment before departure is grief preparation, is emotional protection, is psychological necessity. She's protecting herself from pain of departure by departing emotionally before departing physically. And there's specific timeline to this, specific stages she goes through, specific signs you can recognize. First stage happens without you knowing. Decision stage, where she decides internally that relationship will end, where she determines departure is necessary, where she concludes leaving is inevitable. Once decision is made, once ending becomes certain in her mind, once departure shifts from possible to inevitable, grief process begins. And grief beginning is detachment beginning, is emotional departure initiating. First signs are subtle, are internal, are invisible to you. She's not different externally, is different internally, not behaving differently toward you, is feeling differently about you. Change is happening inside, is processing internally, is occurring psychologically. You can't see internal change, can't observe psychological process, can't witness emotional shift, but there's second shift that's even more telling, more definitive, more impossible to reverse. This is when she stops fighting for relationship, stops trying to fix problems, stops attempting to improve connection, stops working on issues, stops investing in future. Stopping fighting doesn't mean creating conflict, means ceasing effort, means ending investment, means withdrawing energy. Why fight for something you've decided to leave? Why work on something you've determined to end? Why invest in future you've concluded won't exist? And stopping fighting is visible, is observable, is detectable. She stops bringing up issues, stops asking for changes, stops requesting improvements, stops demanding attention, stops requiring effort. Silence where there used to be requests, acceptance where there used to be demands, peace where there used to be conflict, and this feels good to you, feels like improvement, feels like relationship getting better, issues stopped, demands ceased, conflict ended. But peaceful isn't improvement, is detachment. Easy isn't better, is withdrawal. Comfortable isn't connection, is checked out. She stopped fighting because she stopped caring about outcome. Stopped requesting because she stopped investing in future. Stopped demanding because she already decided to leave. And here's what's strange. Here's what doesn't make sense to most men. She can still love you while detaching, can still care while leaving, can still feel connected while disconnecting emotionally. That contradiction, that simultaneous caring and leaving, that's what makes this so confusing. Some of you watching this right now are experiencing this. Sensing distance, but seeing affection. Feeling disconnect, but hearing I love you. And you're wondering which one is real. Both are real. Both exist simultaneously. Both are genuine in moment. She can love you and still leave, can care about you and still detach, can feel connection and still prepare for departure. Love doesn't prevent leaving when relationship isn't sustainable. Caring doesn't stop detachment when ending is necessary. This is why she seems distant while still there, why she appears disconnected while still present, why she feels absent while still around. She's emotionally gone while physically present, internally departed while externally remaining, psychologically left while actually staying. You experience this as confusing, as contradictory, as incomprehensible. She's there but not there, present but absent, staying but leaving. Contradiction exists because you're observing physical presence while she's experiencing emotional absence, tracking external behavior while she's processing internal departure. And there's a specific moment when detachment becomes permanent, when emotional departure becomes irreversible. Most men miss this moment entirely. Point of no return moment, where emotional departure becomes so complete that physical departure is inevitable, where detachment becomes so total that reconnection is impossible. She stops sharing future plans that include you, stops making references to shared future, stops assuming your presence in her tomorrow. Language shifts from we will to I will, from our future to my future, from when we to when I. Linguistic shift reveals psychological shift. Language change indicates internal change. Future that doesn't include you is future she's planning for. Tomorrow without you is tomorrow she's expecting. And when future doesn't include you, relationship doesn't have future. When tomorrow doesn't assume you, connection doesn't have tomorrow. But here's what nobody tells you about this gap, about these months between emotional and physical departure. What you do during this gap makes it worse. You sense distance. You try to close it. You feel disconnect. You try to reconnect. You notice absence. You try to create presence. Every effort you make to restore connection pushes her further into detachment. Every attempt to close gap widens emotional distance. Every try to fix things accelerates departure process. Because she's grieving, and grief requires space, is processing ending. And process requires distance, is preparing for departure. And preparation requires separation. When you try to close gap, you're interrupting grief. When you attempt to reconnect, you're disrupting process. When you pursue, you're preventing preparation. She needs space to grieve. You're eliminating space. She requires distance to process. You're closing distance. She wants separation to prepare. You're demanding connection. Every text asking if she's okay pushes her further away. Every conversation trying to fix things accelerates her departure. Every attempt to restore what was speeds up ending of what is. Gap between emotional departure and physical departure is her grief process period, is her detachment completion time, is her departure preparation phase, and this period needs to happen. This gap needs to exist. And there's reason this process is so invisible, so difficult to detect, so easy to miss. It's designed that way. Anticipatory grief serves protective function, shields griever from pain of simultaneous attachment and loss. If detachment were visible, if grief process were obvious, relationship would end immediately. Can't maintain relationship while openly grieving relationship. Can't stay connected while publicly preparing to disconnect. So process is internal, is private, is invisible. Invisibility allows relationship to continue during grief period, allows physical presence during emotional absence. This is why you don't see it, why process is invisible, why detachment is hidden, not. because she's hiding intentionally, because process is internal necessarily, because grief is private structurally. But there's one thing she experiences during detachment that changes everything about how this ends. And you never see it. Relief. She experiences relief during detachment, feels lightness during grief process, senses freedom during departure preparation. Relief comes from decision made, from uncertainty ended, from ambivalence resolved. Before decision she was conflicted, was uncertain, was torn between staying and leaving, between trying and quitting. But after decision conflict ends, after determination uncertainty resolves, and ending conflict brings relief. Resolving uncertainty creates lightness. She's relieved that decision is made. Light because uncertainty ended. Free because ambivalence resolved. Relief during detachment explains why she seems happier, why she appears lighter, why she feels freer. Not because relationship improved, because decision to leave is made. You interpret happiness as relationship improving. Interpret lightness as connection strengthening. But happiness is from decision made, not relationship improved. Lightness is from conflict ended, not connection strengthened. She seems better because she knows she's leaving. Appears lighter because she decided to go. Feels freer because she resolved to depart. And here's the question most men ask when they learn about anticipatory grief. If she knew months ago, why didn't she just leave then? 3 months of detachment, 6 months of emotional absence. Why stay physically while leaving emotionally? And the answer reveals something about how she experiences ending versus how you experience ending. Multiple reasons for gap, practical reasons, logistical complications, financial dependencies, living situations, shared responsibilities. Can't leave immediately when lives are integrated. When logistics are complicated, emotional reasons, difficulty of confrontation, fear of hurting you, guilt about leaving, uncertainty about decision. Hard to end relationship officially, to have breakup conversation, to cause pain intentionally. Social reasons, shared friends, family connections. Ending relationship disrupts social structure, affects friend groups, impacts family relations. All these reasons create gap, generate delay, produce period between decision and departure. And during gap, during delay, during period, detachment happens, grief processes, departure prepares. And there are 5 specific signs that detachment is happening. 5 behaviors that reveal she's already leaving. Most men misread every single one. First sign, affection becomes performative. She's still affectionate, but affection feels different. Still shows care, but care seems hollow. Affection without emotion behind it. Care without genuine feeling. She's performing affection, not feeling affection. Executing care, not experiencing care. Performance continues because ending isn't official, but performance isn't genuine. Execution isn't authentic. Second sign, future talk disappears. She stops making plans beyond immediate, stops discussing long-term, stops assuming continued future. No more when we for distant future. No more someday while planning. Because her future doesn't include you, her someday doesn't assume you. Can't talk about future that doesn't exist. Can't plan for later that isn't coming. Third sign, conflict avoidance becomes absolute. Not just picking battles, avoiding all battles. Not just letting things go, letting everything go. She doesn't argue, doesn't fight, doesn't engage in disagreement. Complete conflict avoidance, because conflict requires investment. Argument demands caring, and she's not invested. Doesn't care about outcomes. Why fight about something in relationship you're leaving? Fourth sign, individual life expansion. She develops new interests, creates new friendships, expands individual activities, builds separate life. Interests that don't include you, friends that are hers, not ours. Expansion of individual life during relationship means contraction of shared life, means preparation for life without you, means building foundation for post-you existence. Fifth sign, emotional unavailability during your crisis. When you need support and she's absent, when you face difficulty and she's unavailable. Not physically absent, emotionally absent. Not literally unavailable, psychologically unavailable. Because emotional availability requires emotional connection, requires caring about your well-being. An emotional connection is severed. Caring is withdrawn. These 5 signs reveal detachment happening, show grief processing, indicate departure preparing. And there's one final truth about anticipatory grief that explains why you feel so blindsided. This is the part no one wants to accept. By time she tells you it's over, she's not ending relationship for her. She's informing you that relationship ended, for her ending happened months ago. Relationship concluded when decision was made. Official breakup conversation isn't beginning of ending for her, is completion of ending, isn't start of grief, is conclusion of grief. She's already grieved, already processed, already left emotionally. Official conversation is just making external reality match internal reality. This is why she seems fine during breakup, why she appears ready, why she acts prepared. Not because she's cold, because she's been grieving for months. Not because she doesn't care, because she already processed loss. Your grief begins when relationship ends officially. Her grief began months before when she decided to leave. By time you're starting grief process, she's finishing grief process. By time you're experiencing loss, she's already processed loss. This is gap, is asymmetry, is difference in grief timelines. You're beginning what she's completing, experiencing what she's already processed. This is why recovery appears asymmetric, why she seems fine while you're devastated, why she moves on while you're stuck. Not because she's cold, because she's further along grief timeline. So when you look back at relationship, when you review those final months, when you remember that distance you felt, you'll see it differently now. You'll recognize detachment, not distance. You'll identify grief, not mood. You'll understand departure, not distraction. And you'll realize the exact moment she left emotionally, the precise week detachment began, the specific day grief started. For some of you, it was argument that never got resolved, moment where she stopped fighting and you thought she forgave, but she actually checked out. She left before she left, detached before she departed, grieved before loss was official. This is anticipatory grief, is emotional departure before physical departure, is psychological leaving before actual leaving. Understanding this doesn't change what happened, doesn't prevent past pain, doesn't restore ended relationship, but understanding prevents confusion, eliminates wondering why, resolves questioning what happened. You know what happened now. You recognize process now. You understand timeline now. She detached before she left, processed ending before ending was official, departed emotionally before departing physically. And by time she walked out the door, she'd been gone for months. Not cold, not cruel, not heartless, just human, just grieving, just protecting herself through impossible process. She detached before she left, and detachment is how she survived the gap, is how she processed the ending, is how she prepared for the departure. Why she detaches before she leaves is anticipatory grief, is emotional protection, is psychological necessity. She left before she left, and you didn't see it because detachment is invisible. Grief is internal. Departure is emotional before it's physical. She was leaving all along, detaching for months, grieving before loss, departing emotionally before departing actually, and by time she was gone, she'd been gone for much longer than you knew.